All right, excited to welcome Mr. Rick Shumway to the show here. Rick, you are the president and CEO of Stanford Healthcare. Where in the world are you coming to us from today?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be with you, Jeremy. Here in Pleasanton, California, is where I'm sitting today, and it's actually where the offices of the East Bay sections of Stanford Healthcare reside. So, looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, this will be great. I really appreciate you coming on. And what's different about having you on the show today, Rick, is the prior people that have been on the show. One has been a chief people officer, another one was a talent acquisition leader. And, I really want to get more perspectives, not of just HR professionals, but also, senior leaders like yourself, CEOs of companies, and get your perspective on the hiring process, the secrets of the hiring process. So whether you're a candidate, a hiring manager, or part of the recruiting team, we're going to get your secrets today. And you and I've actually talked about this a little bit around how important hiring is to you. So I might ask you another additional question towards the end about the importance of the hiring process to you as a CEO of a large organization. But
Great.
before we get into that, Rick, I do have to ask you what your favorite band is, or your artist or singer.
So I was an early to mid '90s kid growing up, and so it's got to be from that era, which happens to be, in my opinion, the best musical era that ever been produced. But I would have it's this is a tough one. I mean, it's probably either Soundgarden or Pearl Jam, or one of those two.
All right.
So those were good memories and have stood the test of time for sure.
Yes, classics. Those are awesome. Great choice. Love it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, let's jump into the questions. My first question is around secrets for the candidates. So, you interview a ton of candidates, your leaders interview a ton of candidates, but what secrets do you want candidates to know to help them in the hiring process?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, we've all been on that side of the equation, right? And so I think when I think about the answer to this question, I certainly think about my own experiences as a candidate, but as experiences as well that I see pretty regularly here at Stanford. There are probably a couple things that come to mind. I think the first one is probably not a secret, but it's not something that everybody does very well. When you kind of look at the variability here, and it's very simply be who you are, right? Be your authentic self when you're interviewing, when you're going through the process, when you're preparing your responses, all of those things. At the end of the day, as you're considering a position within an organization, of course, you're trying to get them to think favorably of you and give you an opportunity within their organization. But you're also wanting to make sure that you're going to be happy there.
Yeah.
And if you go through that process, not being authentically like who you are, you're probably going to be a little disappointed, even if you're successful in the search. And so I see candidates regularly that do what we all probably inherently do, which is try and make themselves just look amazing and better than everybody else. But I think it resonates with me when I'm interviewing people, when I really feel like I'm connecting with that person, like who that person is. So I think that's really important. And I think along with that, the other piece that I was thinking about as I thought about this question is not only do you need to sort of be who you are in the process, be really discerning about the opportunities that you apply for. Everybody needs to get a job, right? I mean, so I think that there's something there. But at the moment, it's a buyer's market, right? So you need to be really conscientious about the types of positions and the types of organizations that you're thinking about, because you can be, and you spend a lot of time there, and you want to make sure that you're looking for things that are going to match your personality and your ambitions and all of those things. And so because that flexibility exists today, you got to take advantage of that. So at the end of the day, when I think of candidates, that's what I think of is, it's got to be as good a match for you as it does for the organization. And so approach the process with that in mind, right? And that's easier said than done, but certainly something that I would encourage people to think about.
Yeah, I think those are two really great pieces of advice. It's interesting when you have interviews all the time and you're interviewing candidates that are maybe acting a bit more than they are being their authentic self. It's actually really easy to see, right? Yeah,
Yep.
you can tell something's off, something's not right with this, and hiring managers get that, and then it turns them off, right? Because you're like, are you really you? Are you somebody else? Like, what are you? And so that creates a lot of doubt, I think, in people's minds about, oh, maybe this person isn't the right person for this particular role. But then when you're talking about making sure that you're finding the right job for you and you're being discerning about the company that you're looking at, the values that that company has, the purpose behind it. We spend a lot of time at work, and gosh, if you're not doing something that you love and you're passionate and you're behind, you're just never going to be happy in that role. So I think your advice is really strong here. So appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no doubt. It's, and again, it's something that we've all been through, and to me, it's really almost sometimes more difficult to do what we're talking about than it is to just shine yourself up and present what you think they want. That's the other mistake I think people make is
Mm.
you spend a lot of time thinking about what they want to hear and
Yeah.
what they want to see. There's probably a good chance that you're going to miscalculate on that, right? So instead of spending a significant amount of time on thinking through that, which again, you got to be prepared and do all those right things, spend the time really thinking about you and how you present and what you want them to understand about you. So I think that's all correct, what you said.
Yeah, that's cool. So I was going to weave this in a little later on, but maybe I'll weave it in now. When you and I have talked a little bit in the past about the hiring process and specifically with hiring managers, I think you mentioned to me that the hiring process is probably one of the most important things for you as a CEO to make sure that it's done well, that it's done right, it's done effectively. So, what advice do you have for hiring managers as they're going through the process to help them be successful in the hiring process?
So yeah, it's a great question. I'll respond to the first part of your statement there. It legitimately is one of the most critical things that we do as an organization, day in and day out. No matter what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and this is true in any organization, if you have the wrong people, it doesn't matter what your plans are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how good your strategic plan is. It doesn't work. And so it turns out that this part of the organization is one of the most important things that we do. So I agree with you 100% there. As I think about like hiring managers, that is a tough job. It's a tough job because hiring managers are getting it from every single thing, right? There's pressure coming from above, there's pressure coming from below, and there's pressure coming from both sides. And so it's a tough job, right? You're trying to balance all of those things. And one of the things that I've seen occasionally is that in the attempt to balance all of those things, um, thinking about and prioritizing the hiring process is one of those things that falls through the cracks more than it should. When you're really just trying to figure out how you're going to get the next shift filled, or you're really trying to figure out how you're going to meet whatever project deadline that you're trying to do, that list of candidates loses some of its prioritization. And so what I would say, and I've seen it work pretty well, is really be deliberate about carving out dedicated time to spend on that activity. If you don't, it's just easy for other things to take up that time and energy and effort. And so from my perspective, when you really make that a structured priority to say, hey, you know what, whatever your frequency is, depending on how much you're hiring, every week I'm going to carve out these 2 hours or whatever it is to go through the process and advance candidates along and schedule interviews and do all those different things. It really makes a big difference in people's ability to move that process along. I think that's one of the things that I've seen that works really well.
That's Rick, that's music to my ears. I wish every hiring manager in the world will hear this and understand that carving out time is going to make a big difference, because there's a lot of prep work that you have to do in order to have a successful interview. Like, you don't want to go in cold and not knowing the candidate, not knowing their resume, not looking, through the profile of what you're actually assessing for. And a lot of hiring managers do it, and kind of shame on them, because they're not doing themselves any favors. They're not doing the organization any favors. And I think sometimes hiring managers think, oh, I'm so great at interviewing. I'm so great at this. And it's like, gosh, just take a little bit of extra time, carve it out, and do it really well. Like, these are the most important decisions you can make. I imagine similar at your company as most companies in the world, that the largest budget item is typically people,
Huge.
right? And if all that money is going into people, let's make sure that we've got the right people to help generate more money. So I really appreciate what you're saying there, and hopefully people take that to heart. So
Yeah, it's, as hiring managers, I think, again, like many of us, when you look at the time that you spend on any given activity, it's a return on investment equation, right? If I spend this much time to get this project done, I'm going to have this kind of an outcome. And sometimes it's easier to see the ends of those investments than it is the investments that you're making for that real dedicated focus around the recruitment and talent management process, because sometimes that's further out, right? By the time you get somebody hired, trained, moving in the direction you want them, it can be months, and maybe it's even years before they're really like doing what you need them to do. So I think staying away from trying to make those ROI comparisons, because it's apples and oranges. And at the end of the day, it is the people, again, that drive the organization. So it's a hugely important part of what hiring managers should be doing.
100%, 100%. Okay, my last question to get the secrets of the hiring process is really for the recruiting team. So the recruiters that you work with, the sourcers, coordinators, talent acquisition leaders, etc. You work with a lot of them. In fact, you'd mentioned previously that you've hired consulting companies to come in and help look at your end-to-end processes, because it's that important to you to make sure that they're top notch. So what would you share to the recruiting team in terms of the secrets that you'd like them to know to create an amazing experience and help bring on the great talent for you?
So these are probably, again, not secrets, but they're things that as a CEO I look at and think, these are the most important. And the first one is, again, so simple, but it's organization in that process. I'll give you a little insight. I've one position right now that I'm personally recruiting for, and because I serve in the CEO role, in the HR management system that we use, I'm able to look at any given recruitment that's underway at the moment. And so somehow the wires had gotten crossed so that every applicant that was applying to my organization was showing up in my inbox for any position. And so we got that fixed very quickly. But it's unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
literally like thousands of people that are applying at any given time to this organization. If it is not organized, it just grinds the place to a halt.
Yeah.
And so really spending that time structuring your work in a way that you can see the advancement of those candidates at a pace that the organization needs. And then I think that leads to my second one, is prioritization of the work, right? Again, I look at my recruitment teams and I'm like, okay, well, you can't spend equal amounts of time on the thousands of people that you've got coming in. What are the top priority positions? What are the positions with the highest turnover? What parts of the organization are we spending a lot of money on overtime because we can't recruit fast enough? What is the market telling us in terms of where the puts and takes are for wage and benefit differentials? When you think about that, you can start to put things in the right construct.
Yeah.
And focus your energy, which is limited, we're all just human, right? On the most important things. I think that's really key. And then the last one is just so, important, is communication, communication, communication. And again, those recruiter jobs, talent acquisition jobs, are so tricky because you're communicating with a ton of people,
Yeah.
right? You're communicating with the hiring managers, you're recruiting with HR, or communicating with HR, you're communicating with the candidates, you're communicating with references. So that's the job, right?
Yeah.
Is making sure that you're communicating. But when I hear complaints or broken processes around the talent acquisition process, more often than not, it's that there's
Yeah.
some broken piece of that communication chain. So again, it's like that prioritization, of those things is really important. The last thing that I think for this group is that when you think about networking, just broadly speaking, there's obviously the networking that we all do with, our counterparts in the professional worlds that we exist in. But at the end of the day, in recruitment processes, that's another form of networking. You're going to have candidates that are going to reject the job. You're going to have candidates that, you're going to run across later at some point. If they don't have a good experience with you, we're degrading the network that we are needing to keep fresh, right? So I think keeping that in mind, that even though in these many transactions that you're engaging in, you know, sometimes it's just very process oriented, and once you're done with
Yeah.
something, you're done. Making sure that you're focusing on those relationships through that makes a big difference. So those are just a few things that I've thought about.
I love that. I used to work with a really great talent consultant. His name is Paul Gustafson, and he always said that you're perfectly designed to get the outcomes you get.
Yep.
So you talked about all these elements of all these different design elements that are so important around process and communication, prioritization, networking. These are all really important things, and if you do them really well, you're going to have a really great output at the end of the day. So if you're not getting the right output that you're hoping for, you need to go back and look at those design elements and say, what do I need to change? What do I need to do differently? And being open to that as a recruiting team, and knowing that, hey, look, there's always opportunity to get better, but you know let's figure out the things that are going to really move the needle.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. That, again, for jobs that are as complex as talent acquisition, even from a process perspective, it's that structure and organization at the base of everything. I mean, that's what makes or breaks you, right?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, my final question for you is more personal for you. So you've had a really successful career. You've lived, in different parts of the world. You live in different parts of the U.S. and a lot of different healthcare systems. So you've got a lot of really great experience. So what superpower, Rick, do you feel like has really fueled and shaped your career?
I mean, there's of course a lot that goes into sort of analyzing why you are where you are, or why you're doing what you're doing. But as I think, like, honestly about the answer to that question, if you pulled out my resume and you just pointed to something on there, I could probably pretty quickly talk to you about which individuals I partnered with to accomplish that thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't just me, right? It wasn't just my vision or my capabilities or my, skills that accomplished those things. 99% of the things that are accomplished at work are done with others, right? And so that's something that I've really taken to heart over my career, and something I've learned pretty extensively. And so as I think about, like, how we generate outcomes and how we become successful at our organization, it's really figuring out, how do you empower the people that are doing the work to make the decisions that need to be made to accomplish the outcomes that we're looking for. It's easy for me to sit in a boardroom and say, this is what I think we need to do. But that doesn't go very far, because frankly, I'm not as directly connected to some of the things that go on every minute of every day in every part of our organization. So figuring out how you can empower the people that are to have decision-making capabilities that you support them in. Sometimes they'll make good decisions, sometimes they don't, just like all of us, right? And generating a culture, building a culture where that's the expectation, that's how things get done. And as I think about any success that I've had in my career, it's really been on that basis, is, you know, working with people and giving them tools that they need, supporting where I can, and letting them, you know, drive the parts of the ship that they need to. So those are a few of my thoughts as I ponder that question.
No, that's really cool, Rick. And what I'd say too is I feel like you've got a really high IQ level and an EQ level, so very smart and a lot of emotional intelligence. And you have this ability to connect with people, and I think that goes back to your answer there around the people that you work with and how you empower them and how you work together as a team. That's super important. You do that really, really effectively. So I would imagine there's a lot of people that want to come work for you and be a part of your team because of the way that you operate. That's really cool.
I appreciate that. We
Yeah.
try. It's a
Yeah.
day effort, right?
Well, awesome, Rick. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show today, answering all these questions. Super valuable. I imagine you guys have a lot of openings right now. If we were to point people to where to go to find jobs at Stanford Healthcare, where would we point them to?
StanfordHealthcare.org, and there's the careers page, and it'll tell you everything that you need to know. So would very much look forward to welcoming anybody who's interested in joining our organization.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks, Rick. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Take care.
Take care.
Hey, I really hope you're enjoying the Secrets of Hiring podcast. Today, we had the conversation with Rick Shumway, President and CEO of Stanford Healthcare. It's kind of fun to see a perspective from a senior leader of an organization. These are kind of perspectives that we want to bring to you. These are the secrets that we want to share with you to help you be successful, whether you're a candidate, a hiring manager, or you're part of the recruiting team. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next podcast.